Every day that goes by, new and more trade rumors come out for the Chicago Bulls. This time, hearing that the Timberwolves are calling on possibly 3 Chicago Bulls guards. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Tre Jones' value is also rising. Coby and Ayo are drawing real interest. And we have a list by Andrew Hanlon of big swings that the Chicago Bulls could make. We'll talk about that all and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Derek Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all. And we got another new rumor, trade rumor here for the Chicago Bulls, this time coming once again from the Chicago Sun-Times, that does say that the Minnesota Timberwolves had made calls on 3 Chicago Bulls guards. Now, we've speculated on this here. If you're a consistent viewer of Chicago Bulls Central, you know that I have talked about the Timberwolves being interested in a lot of the Bulls guards. We've heard, earlier in the season, they could be a team that's interested in Coby White. Then we kind of heard that, hey, they may not want or be willing to take on anything that they're going to have to pay big money in the offseason or even a big trade now, right? They are being very cap conscious in regards to whatever acquisition that they do make, as most teams are, because you want to avoid the second tax apron. And with Anthony Edwards growing as a playmaker, definitely growing as a shooter, all the things that he's done so far in his career, they need a point guard there, but they don't necessarily need, a superstar level point guard, right? So, that's what you're looking at. So in regards to Coby White, it's always been, he can make sense with Coby. I think Coby and Anthony Edwards in the backcourt could make a lot of sense. The rumors that have been there for a while, it all makes sense if they're interested in Coby White. Again, we've talked about that. Well, can we get Juan Behringer back? What does that mean for the Bulls, right? Those type of things, stuff like that. And this is a Timberwolves team that, like I said, they are being cap conscious. They are looking at avoiding that second tax apron. They're only $3.5 million below the second tax apron this year. They get a little bit more relief next year as they're $24 million beneath the second tax apron. But that's with no players really other than Mike Conley and Joe Ingles becoming, unrestricted free agents. So most of their roster, they're going to get some cap relief there, and that's solid for them. The question then becomes about is going in on Coby White, what they want to do there. Is that the right use for the assets? Are they going to be willing to pay him what he's offered, what he's asked? Or are they willing to just kind of look at it as a half-year rental, right? So hearing that they're interested in Coby White isn't anything that we haven't heard before, right? Now, the question then becomes about Ayo Dosunmu. Now, Ayo, much like Coby, is going to be getting a sizable contract extension at the end of this year. And, while it's not probably going to be as much as what Coby White's making, he is going to be getting, probably between $16 to $18 million, maybe even a $20 million, depending on how well he finishes this season. So we'll see what happens there. But then hearing that they also called on Tre Jones. This is the one that makes the most sense. The Minnesota Timberwolves calling on Tre Jones makes sense because of the things that I've talked about on episodes before. One, very cost control contract. 2 more years left after the season at only $8 million. And the last year on that deal is a team option, meaning if for some reason he doesn't work out, if for some reason, you want to go after a bigger swing, you can opt out of that contract. You can use that money elsewhere. So all those things go into that. It all makes sense for the Minnesota Timberwolves to really be in on Tre Jones. That is the one that I'm looking at and saying, if the Timberwolves are going to make a really strong push in regards to trying to get one of the Chicago Bulls guards, Tre Jones is probably the most likely scenario there. Now, I could be wrong on that. They could look at it and say, no, we want Ayo. We want that defense. We'll be willing to pay it, whatever it is. I just said they're going to be about $24 million beneath the second tax apron. So technically, if Ayo's contract is 16 to 18, they can afford to re-sign him at that because they will have his bird rights if they do trade for him, if that makes sense. But Tre still seems like the most likely scenario here for the Minnesota Timberwolves if a deal is to be done. We've heard that the interest is there. We've heard that they made the calls, but we haven't necessarily heard if the Bulls are willing to part with Tre Jones. The one thing about Artūras Karnišovas that we all can say is that if players are playing well for him and the team is winning, he is not apt to give up any players. And the Bulls re-signed Tre Jones for a reason, right? They traded Lonzo. They got Isaac Okoro back. That opened up them to re-sign Tre Jones. That's basically what they did. And so just knowing the history that we know about AK and how much he favors players that he either trades for, re-signs, or drafts, there could be a reluctance there to give it up. Now, I love Tre Jones, and I would love to see Tre Jones stay in the Chicago Bulls uniform. I think he's done nothing but performed well for this team. He's played multiple different roles as far as sometimes he's the point guard, sometimes he's the off-ball guard, sometimes he needs to score, sometimes it's more facilitating. He rebounds well, especially when you consider his size. He is the type of player that we love here because he fights, he competes, and he's productive. We love players like that in Chicago. But at the same time, if you can get your young big in the future in a Juan Behringer, I don't know if we can pass that up. Like, Tre is great, but if you have a potential to get a guy that could be your starting center of the future, I don't know if the Bulls are at a place where they can pass that up. Again, that's just my personal opinion. You guys can view it differently. Of course, you have your Bulls fans that want to see Coby traded. You have your Bulls fans that want us to keep Ayo by any means necessary. So everybody's going to have different views all over the spectrum when it comes down to this. But I think one thing that we're seeing, and Joe Cowley points this out in his article as well, is that Tre Jones is becoming one of the best trade chips for the Chicago Bulls. Even so much so that Casey Johnson said this recently on the Fast Break, said this. There is already some Tre Jones chatter around the league. Could he be flipped because he has a very tradable contract and he's playing at a high level and could benefit any team in the league? So it's something to monitor between now and February 5th. Now, some people look at Casey Johnson and say he's a mouthpiece of the organization, or that he says stuff to float out there that the front office wants out there. Maybe you're trying to drum up interest for Tre Jones, something like that. I don't know. But I will say this. Tre Jones is having a really good season, and Casey Johnson is not wrong by saying that he can help just about any team in the league because of what he's doing out there. And so we'll see. Active, solid defender, active on defense, really good facilitator. The assist-to-turnover ratio is really good when it all comes down to that. And he's on a cost control contract, which we're seeing has pretty great value around the league. So that's really what you have to look at for this team. And I guess we're going to see. I guess we'll see what the value is and how the Bulls view Tre Jones. I'm still of the mind where I don't necessarily think anything big is going to happen, but Tre Jones, Jalen Smith, these are the two players that I keep saying, we love these guys. They've been playing great, but they offer some of the best value. And like people always say, right, and this is where I'm going to hold some of y'all accountable to some of the things y'all say, because y'all will complain and say, well, we passed up on value for Coby. We passed up on value for Zach. We passed up on value for Vooch. We should have traded these guys early while their value was high. I don't know if Jalen Smith and Tre Jones' value is ever going to be higher than what it is. So that's something that you have to weigh into this as well. Like, they both, Jalen has had some injuries. Tre really hasn't, right? But their value is really high right now. And there's a premium at right now around the league for team looking for serviceable bigs and point guards. And this may be the time where the Bulls have to strike because the value's out there on the league on these guys. I'm not saying that I want them to go. I'm not saying that they're playing bad. But one thing that I need every Bulls fan to start realizing, too, is that stop saying, why are we looking to trade good players? We should be trading P. Will. Nobody wants P. Will. If you want the Bulls to make good trades, guess what? You have to trade good players. You have to trade players with value, or you hold them. And that's the two options here. So a lot of the people that complain about AK holding on to players, some of y'all are doing the same thing by not wanting to let go of players because they're playing well if you want the value back. That's just something to think about. Now, I'm all for keeping the talent. And that's just something, me personally, I'm all for keeping the talent for the Chicago Bulls because I'm not as down on this team as some other people are. I think if we get a chance to get fully healthy and finish the season, we can finish it pretty strong. But at the same time, like I say this with everybody. That's with Coby. That's with Ayo. That's with most players. There is a point where the value hits so high, maybe you get an offer that you can't pass up. To go back to the Zach LaVine thing, his value was at an all-time high the year after we extended him when the New York Knicks offered 3 picks. I believe 2 of those were unprotected, 1 protected first-round pick with 2 unprotected first-round picks and R.J. Barrett for Zach LaVine. That was the highest his value was at. The Bulls did not trade him at the height of that value, and we saw that value keep going down after that. So, we'll see what AK does. The Timberwolves being interested in the Bulls guards, it makes sense. We're a guard-heavy team. The Timberwolves need a guard. Mike Conley's not playing well, so I guess we shall see what the future's going to hold for this team and if they strike on that. But I want to get into an interesting article. I don't usually do this type of content because I like to stick it on kind of rumors that come from Brett Siegel or kind of more reliable sources and outlets, right? But we do have a pretty decent trade rumor here. A set of trade ideas here. This comes from Andrew Hanlon, who wrote this article on 4 risky trade targets that the Chicago Bulls can go after. These are all star-level players that the Bulls can go after. Number 1, he lists Karl-Anthony Towns. With us hearing that the New York Knicks are open to moving Karl-Anthony Towns, probably more than they ever have been, could the Bulls make a swing for Karl-Anthony Towns? I get what Andrew Hanlon's getting at with this article. Make no mistake about it. Like, you're getting a player that is one of the best shooting bigs in the league. Bring some defensive limitations, but we already have defensive limitations with Nikola Vucevic. How would he play with? We already seen the Jalen Brunson, Karl-Anthony Towns pick and roll. What does that pick and roll look like with Josh Giddey, right? That's something that you're looking at there as one of my lights dies. The blue one never dies. So that's what you're looking at. But you look at Karl-Anthony Towns' contract. $57 million next year, $53 million this year. The last year with $61 million, and that's a player option, so he's very likely to pick that up. That is a huge contract for the Bulls to make move for. Now, we can match it with expiring salary, but I just think if the Knicks are going to actively shop Karl-Anthony Towns, they're probably going to get a lot more back than the Bulls being able to what they offer in just expiring, unless the Bulls are willing to give up. The Knicks have given up a lot of picks. Now, the way that I could see this happening, if it were to happen, is probably a 3-team trade. Whereas because the Knicks don't have a lot of picks because of what they gave up, maybe you're making a move with a different team. The Bulls are the 3rd team. They're giving the picks. They're getting Karl-Anthony Towns back. And maybe the Knicks are getting a player from a team that just is valuing the draft picks and expiring salaries. So maybe it's something like that could happen. But I still think overall, if the Knicks are going to move Karl-Anthony Towns, I doubt it's going to be for the Chicago Bulls. But it is a big name, and it is a big fish. Next up, Anthony Davis. We've talked so much about Anthony Davis and the potential coming to the Bulls at the beginning. He has everything that's wrong with Towns. $60 million contract. He plays less than 60 games a season. I don't think that AK, who has been so risk-adverse since trading for Nikola Vucevic, I just don't think you're at a spot now where you can try to trade for Anthony Davis. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, if he was going to be fully healthy, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But we're at the point in Anthony Davis's career where he's not going to be healthy, and he's looking for a contract extension. And reportedly, he wants money. And listen, I'm not going to be 100% honest with you. I kind of don't want any clutch sports clients really on this team, especially not at the level that Anthony Davis is at in the contract that he would give, because Rich Paul feels like he has control over a franchise when he has a player that's playing that way. So I'm kind of good there. I'm kind of good on that one personally. That's just my thought process. You guys can let me know how you feel on it down below. I listen, Anthony Davis, I get it. A lot of Bulls fans are very star crazed and thirsty right now. But I'm not at the place where I'm willing to bet the future of my franchise so much with assets and money that we trade for Anthony Davis while he's hurt. Next up, Jaren Jackson Jr. Now, there's been some back and forth on if the Memphis Grizzlies would actually move Jaren Jackson Jr. You know, reportedly, they could look to move off of Ja. If they do that, they want to build around Jaren Jackson Jr. That also makes some sense. I just don't know if the Bulls are going to have the assets to get that done. This guy who was Defensive Player of the Year in 2022-23. He shot 37% from 3 over the last 2 seasons, taking 5 per game. But he's not a great rebounder. He's a great rim protector, but not a great rebounder. And so I just don't know, really. He doesn't want to play center, so you're playing him at the 4, you're moving Modest to the 3, you know, and you probably have to give up Noah Essengay in that case. I'm not mad if they do it. It's just that you still need to make subsequent moves, and that's usually where AK has failed at, is making those needed subsequent moves after an acquisition that make the acquisition make more sense. And that's what you have to look at here if you're the Chicago Bulls. But Jaren Jackson Jr., if he does become available, I'm not mad at the Bulls trying to go out and get him. I'm not mad at that. I wouldn't be mad at that at all if the Bulls wanted to make a really big effort to go out there and get him. I just don't know if I think it's going to actually work out for them in that case. But, you know, we'll see. Jaren Jackson Jr., though, is a name that's available. And then lastly, he mentioned Giannis Antetokounmpo. Listen, the Giannis thing ain't happening. I don't know what else to tell y'all. The Giannis Antetokounmpo to the Chicago Bulls thing, it's not happening. It's not going down. We can get over it. It's not going to happen. Now, I understand why Andrew Hanlon mentions it, but the whole NBA is waiting on Giannis, when you have Miami, when you have the New York Knicks, when you have these other teams that we've heard are holding on to their assets potentially to go after Giannis Antetokounmpo, I just don't see a world in which the Bulls can offer the best move. I just don't. Even if the Bucks get to a point where they're like, just give us one young player back and picks, I just think there are other teams that would be willing to give more than that for Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think the Houston Rockets are one that would do that. Of course, the Miami Heat, the New York Knicks. So I just don't know what's going to happen there. I like Giannis, and make no mistake about it, he's a generational level talent. That's just who Giannis Antetokounmpo is. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Giannis is a generational talent in this league. The question then becomes more about, can the Bulls match it, and does he really want to come here? Now, I know that there was a rumor early on that the Bulls turned it down, and people use that and all that type of shit. It is what it is there. But, yeah, I don't see it happening. I'm just going to be 100% honest with you. I just don't see it happening with the Bulls getting Giannis Antetokounmpo. But, hey, I've been wrong before. If they do, it'll be the biggest swing that AK has ever made, and it will be bringing a legitimate star to a team that has been so star-thirsty. And this is after, Derrick Rose had an interview on 670 The Score in which he was asked, what does he feel this current Bulls team is missing? And he said, a star. He said, you need stars. You need superstars. He said, I don't know how you go out and get it. Do you sign one? Do you draft one? But you need a star in this league. And he's not wrong. So, all these trades all these targets that Andrew Hanlon pointed out, it all makes sense because the Bulls do need a star. I just don't know if AK is at the point where he's going to make a trade for that. But hey, like I said, been wrong before. Won't be mad at being wrong again if it means that the Bulls get to where they need to get to. We just got to see what's going to happen there. But with that said, the next thing that I want to talk about is that there's a lot of talk about Peyton Watson, right? I touched on the Peyton Watson potential trade a little bit, a couple of episodes ago. And with Peyton Watson having a breakout year where he's averaging 14 points, 5 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block per game, he's doing it efficiently on 50% shooting from the field, 40% shooting from 3. This is a guy that's had a great year heading into restricted free agency. No doubt about it, right? And the thing becomes about with him going into restricted free agency, this is where you can literally try to use your money. Like, we talked a lot about AK and setting up for the free agency of 2026. There are some notable free agents there, but restricted free agency is always where the better names were. And so people are going to ask, and people have asked this to me before when we had this conversation of, okay, why is it? Why is it that the Denver Nuggets would let him go? And I don't think they'll do it by choice, right? But let's be clear here, right? The Denver Nuggets have made it clear that they do want to re-sign him. But the thing is that it's clear that they are a team that wants to stay away from the second tax apron. And as it stands right now, they are so close to that. With that, like when you already look at them getting Christian Braun paid, stuff like that, it could put them in a spot where they just aren't able to offer Peyton Watson a contract while some other teams, and we've seen this other teams put in this situation before. Now, could they look to trade off some other players so they can create space to get Peyton Watson? Absolutely. But this is where the Bulls need to use their cap space to their advantage if they're going to do something like that. This is the type of player that you can definitely go out and get that. They already are paying Christian Braun over $20 million. His contract extension kicks in next year. The Denver Nuggets are only $1 million beneath the second tax apron going into next season, and that's without signing anybody. So when you look at this, it's simple. If the Bulls want a player like Peyton Watson, if they want to they have to test the Denver Nuggets by saying, bet, we're giving them a $25 to $30 million offer sheet. If you want him, you're going to have to go in the second tax apron and get him. And that is what the Bulls would have to do. That is a possibility here to go after it. Peyton Watson is somebody I would love the Bulls to target. I think if you sign Peyton Watson, you have him and Modest as your forwards. You still have Noah Essengate, who you're bringing up and along as well. It all makes some sense there. But the Bulls would have to put that big offer sheet out and hope that they don't match it, which is already a risk because it then ties up your money a little bit as well. So that's what would have to happen here. Will the Bulls do it? We shall see. But Peyton Watson is definitely emerging as a huge free agent target potentially for the Chicago Bulls this offseason. That will make tons of sense for the Bulls to go out and get next offseason. But let me know what you guys think on that down below. Last topic. Today we do take on the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Timberwolves are coming into this game 27-17. They're 12-8 in their last 20 games and 6-4 in their last 10. But they are riding a 3-game losing streak with their most recent loss coming against the Utah Jazz. So that shows that just like any team, they can get beat on any given day. The Minnesota Timberwolves, though, are a top 10 offense, 6th offensively in the league, 8th defensively, and those are the type of teams that give the Bulls fits. They're efficient. 5th in true shooting percentage, 5th in effective field goal shooting percentage, 17th in assists, 8th in turnover percentage. They don't turn the ball over a lot, and they're one of the best rebounding teams in the game of basketball. So if the Bulls want a chance in this game against the Minnesota Timberwolves, they have to give complete effort on both sides of the ball. Complete and utter effort throughout the entirety of the year, of the game. They have to play a complete 4 quarters. Now, Josh Giddey could very well make his return tonight. We'll see if he does end up doing that. If he does, we need to win his minutes. He's going to be on a minutes restriction. He's probably going to be coming off the bench. We'll see what happens with that. But I'm looking at this game. I'm looking at the game Coby, Ayo, and Modest had against the Los Angeles Clippers. We're going to have repeat performances of that. We're going to have a bench that scores 45 to 50 points probably again in this game, and the Bulls are going to have to try to kill him with depth. But the Minnesota Timberwolves are also a very deep team, so the Bulls can try to match depth with depth, but they have to give that total effort. That is what it comes down to with this Bulls team. If Coby shooting the ball well again, which will be his 3rd game in a row shooting the ball effectively, that's going to help. You already know Ayo's an efficient player. How effective is Josh Giddey going to be back after sitting out for 3 weeks? That's another question that's there if he ends up playing. So we'll see. The Wolves' big man depth also can give absolute fits to Nikola Vucevic, Jalen Smith. That's really it that we got. We'll see if we play Lachlan Albrook a little bit out there. So we'll see what the Bulls can do, man. It's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a tough night for this team. But if they can come out here and give that effort, make it interesting, we'll see. We are 1 game below 500. This is the time for the Bulls to make their move. They had a statement win against the Clippers. Can they do it again against the Minnesota Timberwolves team? We're going to see what's going to happen with that one. But Bulls fans, things are starting to get interesting. The calls are coming in. The schedule is tough, and the front office cannot afford to sit on their hands. Whether the Bulls sell, pivot, or take a real swing, the next few weeks are going to tell us everything we need to know about this team. Drop your thoughts down below in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you guys. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel as well. You can follow us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.